The rain hammered Eli's windshield like 1,000 tiny fists, each drop a reminder of the 12-hour drive he'd endured. His hands, calloused from years of manual labor, tightened on the wheel as he squinted through the storm, the wipers barely keeping up. In the passenger seat, a homemade chocolate cake his sister's favorite sat in a taped-up box, a fragile symbol of the love he refused to let die. Eli Carter was 26, a carpenter from a small town in Georgia, with a heart too big for the narrow minds around him. He'd been out for 3 years, and every day since had felt like a war. Not with fists or guns, but with words, silences, and the ache of being unseen. His family, his parents, his older brother, even his cousins had branded him the gay disgrace the moment he'd come out at a Sunday dinner. The memory still burned, his mother's gasp, his father's slammed fist, and his brother's cold, "You're no son of ours." Yet here he was, driving through a Tennessee downpour to make it to his sister Lila's 21st birthday, the one person who'd never turned her back on him. The road blurred, not just from the rain, but from the tears Eli fought back. Lila had called him 2 weeks ago, her voice trembling with excitement. "Eli, I'm getting married," she'd said, "and I need you here. You're my family, no matter what they say." Those words had lit something in him, a spark of hope he hadn't felt since he was a kid running through the fields with her, laughing under a wide southern sky. He'd spent days baking that cake, measuring every ingredient like it was a prayer, determined to show up for her. But as the miles ticked by, doubt crept in. Would his family even let him through the door? Would Lila's fiancé, a man he'd never met, accept him? Or would this be another night of rejection, another scar to carry? Eli's truck rattled as he crossed into Virginia, the storm unrelenting. His phone buzzed on the dashboard. A text from Lila, "You still coming? Please don't let them scare you off." He swallowed hard, his throat tight. He'd promised her he'd be there. And Eli Carter didn't break promises, not to Lila. Not ever. The cake, though, was another story. He glanced at it, noticing the box had shifted slightly in the last hour. He'd made it from scratch, just like their grandma used to, layering it with love and memories of better days. If it fell apart before he got there, it'd feel like his heart had too. He thought back to the last time he'd seen his family, a year ago at Christmas. His father had barely looked at him. His mother had prayed loudly for his sinful soul. And his brother, Nate, had muttered slurs under his breath. Lila had been the only one to hug him, whispering, "I love you, Eli. Always will." That hug had kept him going, had given him the strength to keep showing up, even when it hurt. Now, with her wedding just days away, he couldn't shake the fear that this trip might be his last chance to prove he belonged. The rain eased slightly as he passed a sign for Roanoke, but the weight in his chest didn't. Eli wasn't just driving to a birthday party, he was driving toward a reckoning. He didn't want to fight, didn't want to beg for acceptance. All he wanted was to be seen, to be loved for who he was. The cake was his offering, a piece of his heart wrapped in frosting. But would it be enough? As the miles dwindled, he steeled himself for what lay ahead, a family that might never change, a sister who needed him, and a love he'd fight for, no matter the cost. By the time Eli pulled into the gravel driveway of his childhood home, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. The house loomed ahead, its porch light casting a harsh glow. He parked, his hands trembling as he grabbed the cake box. The front door was just steps away, but it felt like a battlefield. Lila's voice echoed in his mind, "You're my family." He took a deep breath, stepped out into the night. and walked toward the door, ready to face whatever waited inside. The door creaked open, and Eli's heart thudded as his mother's face appeared in the frame. Her eyes, once warm with bedtime stories, now hardened at the sight of him. "Elijah," she said. Her voice clipped. "Didn't expect you to show." Eli clutched the cake box tighter, the cardboard damp from the rain. "It's Lila's birthday, Ma. I wouldn't miss it." He forced a smile, but it felt like a plea. The foyer smelled of pot roast and pine cleaner, a cruel reminder of the home he'd once known. His mother stepped aside, her silence louder than any words. Inside, the living room buzzed with relatives, uncles, aunts, cousins, none of whom met his gaze. Lila's laughter cut through the tension, and there she was, her dark curls bouncing as she rushed toward him. "Eli," she squealed, throwing her arms around him. The cake box wobbled, but he steadied it, relief flooding his chest. Her hug was a lifeline, pulling him back from the edge of despair. "You made it," she whispered, her eyes shining. "I was so scared you wouldn't." She glanced at the box. "Is that chocolate? Just like you love," Eli said, his voice soft but proud. "Took me 3 tries to get the frosting right." Lila's fiancé, James, approached a tall man with a kind face and a hesitant smile. "You must be Eli," he said, extending a hand. "Lila's told me a lot about you." Eli shook it, searching James's eyes for judgment, but finding only curiosity. Maybe, just maybe, this guy was different. The moment shattered when Nate, Eli's older brother, sauntered over. "Well, look who's back," he drawled, his voice dripping with disdain. "The gay disgrace, dragging mud into our house." The room fell silent, forks pausing midair. Eli's stomach twisted, but he stood taller, refusing to shrink. "Nate, stop it," Lila snapped, stepping between them. "He's here for me." Nate smirked, leaning closer. "What's in the box, Eli?" "Some rainbow cake to ruin the party." "It's for Lila," Eli said, his voice steady despite the fire in his chest. "You don't have to like me, but you don't get to ruin her day." Their father, Tom, appeared from the kitchen, his presence heavy as a storm cloud. "Enough," he barked, glaring at Eli. "You're here. Don't make a scene." The words cut deeper than Nate's taunts, a reminder that Eli's existence was the scene. Lila grabbed Eli's arm, pulling him toward the dining room. "Come on, let's cut the cake." Her voice was bright, but her grip was tight, like she was anchoring them both. The table was set with her favorite blue tablecloth, and Eli carefully placed the cake in the center. As he opened the box, he held his breath, praying it had survived the journey. The cake was intact, its glossy frosting a small victory. "Eli, it's beautiful," Lila said, her voice breaking. She hugged him again, and for a moment, the room's hostility faded. But as they sliced into the cake, Eli caught his mother whispering to an aunt, her words sharp, "He shouldn't be here." Dinner was a minefield. Eli sat beside Lila, trying to focus on her stories about wedding plans and James's job as a high school teacher. But every laugh felt like a dare, every glance from his family a judgment. Nate kept needling comments about real men and family values, while their father ate in silence, his disapproval louder than words. After dessert, Lila pulled Eli onto the porch, away from the suffocating tension. The rain had stopped, leaving the air thick with the scent of wet earth. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice small. "I thought maybe they'd be better this time." Eli shook his head, forcing a smile. "You're worth it, Lila. Always will be." She squeezed his hand. "James likes you. He's not like them. And I need you at the wedding. Eli, promise me you'll come." He nodded, but doubt not at him. The wedding was in 3 days. And if tonight was any indication, it would be a battlefield. As he drove to a nearby motel, the cake's empty box rattling in the back, Eli wondered if love could ever be enough to bridge the gap between him and the family he still, against all odds, wanted to call his own. Eli woke to the hum of the motel's ancient air conditioner, his dreams haunted by his father's cold stare. He checked his phone, a text from Lila with a heart emoji and a reminder to meet her at the wedding venue today. The thought of facing his family again twisted his gut, but Lila's faith in him was a tether he couldn't cut. He drove to the venue, a rustic barn on the outskirts of town, its wooden beams draped in fairy lights. The morning sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden glow over the fields. Lila was outside, directing caterers with a clipboard and a smile that could melt glaciers. When she saw Eli, she dropped everything and ran to him. "You're here," she said, her voice a mix of relief and joy. "Wouldn't miss it," Eli said, hugging her tightly. He noticed James nearby, talking to a florist. The guy seemed genuine, but Eli couldn't shake the fear that James might buckle under the family's pressure. Lila pulled him aside, her expression serious. "Eli, I need to tell you something. Nate's been stirring things up. He told Dad you shouldn't be in the wedding photos. Said it'd confuse people." Eli's jaw clenched. "And what did Dad say?" She hesitated. He didn't argue. The words hit like a punch, but Eli swallowed the pain. "Doesn't matter. I'm here for you, not them." Lila's eyes softened. "You're my best man, Eli. I don't care what they think." The words should have lifted him, but they only sharpened the stakes. Being Lila's best man meant standing in front of everyone, family, friends, strangers, knowing most of them saw him as a stain on their perfect picture. He nodded, forcing a smile. "I've got your back, sis." The day blurred with wedding prep, arranging tables, checking sound systems, and dodging his family's icy glances. Nate was everywhere, his smirk a constant jab. At one point, he cornered Eli near the barn's entrance. "You really think you belong here?" Nate hissed. "You're embarrassing, Lila. Parading around like you're normal." Eli's fists tightened, but he kept his voice low. "Lila asked me to be here. That's all that matters." Nate scoffed, stepping closer. "You're a fool if you think she'll pick you over us. Blood's thicker than your little rebellion." Before Eli could respond, James appeared, his voice calm but firm. "Nate, back off. Eli's family, and he's staying." Nate glared but walked away, muttering under his breath. Eli looked at James, gratitude mixing with suspicion. "Thanks," he said cautiously. James shrugged. "Lila loves you. That's enough for me." The rehearsal dinner that night was a tightrope walk. Eli sat at the edge of the table, picking at his food while his mother made pointed comments about traditional values. His father barely spoke, but his silence was a weapon. Lila kept the mood light, sharing stories about her and Eli as kids, how he'd taught her to ride a bike, how he'd stayed up all night helping her with a school project. Each memory was a thread tying them together, But Eli felt the weight of every stare, every whisper. After dinner, he slipped outside to clear his head. The stars were bright, the air cool against his skin. James joined him, holding 2 beers. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. Eli nodded, and they sat on a bench, the silence companionable. "Lila told me what it's been like for you," James said after a sip. "I can't imagine how hard it is. But I see how much you love her. That's what matters." Eli stared at the bottle in his hands. "I just want her to be happy, even if it means putting up with all this." James nodded. "You're a good brother. And for what it's worth, I'm glad you're here." The words were a small balm, but Eli couldn't shake the dread building inside him. Tomorrow was the wedding, and with it came the moment of truth. Would his family let him stand by Lila's side, or would they find a way to push him out? As he drove back to the motel, the stars above felt impossibly far, and the road ahead felt even longer. The wedding day dawned crisp and clear, the kind of autumn morning that made Virginia glow. Eli stood in front of the motel mirror, adjusting his tie, his reflection a mix of determination and fear. Today, he'd walk Lila down the aisle, her choice. Not their father's sand, he couldn't let her down. At the barn, the air buzzed with anticipation. Guests arrived in waves, their chatter mingling with the soft strum of a guitar. Lila was radiant in her white dress, her smile a beacon as she pulled Eli into a hug. "You look handsome," she teased, straightening his lapel. "You're stealing the show," he replied, his voice thick with pride. For a moment, it was just them, the way it used to be. But as they stepped into the main hall, Eli felt the weight of his family's eyes. His mother sat in the front row, her lips a thin line. Nate leaned against a wall, arms crossed, his glare like a blade. The ceremony began, and Eli took his place beside Lila, his heart pounding. The officiant's voice was a distant hum as Eli focused on his sister, her hand trembling in his. When it was time to walk her down the aisle, he felt every step like a defiance, a declaration that he belonged. James waited at the altar, his smile steady, and Eli handed Lila over, his chest tight with love and loss. The vows were beautiful, Lila's voice breaking as she promised to love James forever. Eli stood to the side, his role as best man a quiet honor. But during the reception, the tension crept back. Nate approached as Eli grabbed a drink, his voice low and venomous. "You think this changes anything? You're still an outsider." Eli's temper flared, but he bit it back. "I'm here for Lila, not you." Nate laughed, cold and sharp. "Keep telling yourself that." The night wore on, and Eli stayed close to Lila, dancing with her under the twinkling lights. She laughed, her joy infectious, and for a moment, Eli felt like he belonged. But then his father approached, his face a mask of disapproval. "Elijah, we need to talk," he said, his voice low. Eli followed him outside, bracing himself. Tom stood by the barn, his hands in his pockets. "You being here, it's upsetting your mother. You're making this about you." Eli's heart sank, but he stood his ground. "I'm here for Lila. She asked me to be her best man. You don't get to take that away." Tom's eyes narrowed. "You're tearing this family apart. You always have." The words cut deeper than Eli expected, but he refused to break. "I'm not the one tearing us apart, Dad. You are." Tom walked away, leaving Eli alone in the dark. He leaned against the barn, his breath shaky. Lila found him moments later, her face etched with worry. "What happened?" she asked. Eli shook his head. "Same old story. They'll never see me." She hugged him fiercely. "I see you, Eli. And I'm so proud you're here." As they returned to the reception, Eli caught James watching them, a quiet respect in his eyes. The night wasn't over, and neither was the fight. But with Lila by his side, Eli felt a flicker of hope, a hope that maybe, just maybe, love could outlast hate. The reception stretched into the night, the barn alive with music and laughter. Eli stayed on the edges, watching Lila twirl with James, her happiness alight in the dark. But every smile he gave her was shadowed by the weight of his family's rejection. He'd caught his mother whispering to guests, her words laced with shame about Elijah's choices. Nate's taunts had grown bolder, fueled by whiskey and old grudges. Eli was refilling his drink when Nate cornered him again, this time with a small crowd of cousins nearby. "You really think you're part of this?" Nate slurred, his voice loud enough to draw eyes. "You're a walking embarrassment. Eli, why don't you just leave?" The room seemed to shrink. Every face turned toward them. Eli's pulse raced, but he kept his voice steady. "I'm not going anywhere. Nate. Lila wants me here." Nate stepped closer, his breath sour. "You're not her brother. You're nothing." Before Eli could respond, Lila appeared, her face flushed with anger. "That's enough, Nate," she shouted, her voice cutting through the music. The band faltered, and the room went quiet. "Eli is my brother, and he's more family to me than you'll ever be." Nate laughed, but it was hollow. "You're picking him over us. Over Dad." Lila's eyes blazed. "Yes, because he loves me without conditions. Can you say the same?" The crowd parted as their father approached, his face a storm of emotions. "Lila, don't do this," he said, his voice low but commanding. "You're making a scene." "No, Dad," Lila said, her voice breaking. "You're the ones making this about hate. Eli drove 12 hours in the rain with a cake for me. He stood by me when none of you did. If you can't accept him, you're the ones who don't belong here." Eli's throat tightened, her words a shield he hadn't expected. James stepped forward, placing a hand on Lila's shoulder. "She's right," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Eli's family. If you can't see that, maybe you need to leave." The room was silent, the weight of James's words hanging heavy. Tom's face reddened, but he didn't speak. Nate stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Their mother stood frozen, tears in her eyes, but she didn't move to stop him. Lila turned to Eli, her hand shaking. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I didn't want this for you." Eli pulled her into a hug, his voice barely above a whisper. "You stood up for me. That's more than enough." The reception resumed, but the air had changed. Some guests avoided Eli's eyes. Others offered small, awkward smiles. He danced with Lila again, her laughter a balm for the wounds of the night. As they swayed, she whispered, "I meant every word. You're my hero, Eli." Later, James found him outside, the stars bright above. "You okay?" he asked, handing Eli a coffee. Eli nodded, though his heart was heavy. "I didn't want to cause a fight. I just wanted to be here for her." "You didn't cause this," James said. "They did. And for what it's worth, I'm proud to have you as a brother-in-law." The words caught Eli off guard, a warmth spreading through him. For the first time, he felt a glimpse of what family could be, not the one he was born into, but the one he was building. As the night ended, he drove back to the motel, Lila's words echoing in his mind. Tomorrow, he'd face his family again. But tonight, he held on to the love that had carried him this far. Eli barely slept, his mind replaying the reception, Lila's fierce defense, James's quiet support, and the sting of his family's rejection. Morning brought a new challenge, a post-wedding brunch at his parents' house. Lila had insisted he come, but the thought of facing them again felt like walking into a lion's den. He arrived early, the house quiet except for the clink of dishes in the kitchen. Lila greeted him at the door, her eyes puffy from crying. "Dad's been talking to Mom all morning," she said, her voice low. "I don't know what they're planning, but it's about you." Eli's stomach churned, but he nodded. "Let's get through this." The brunch table was set with pancakes and coffee, a facade of normalcy. His mother avoided his gaze, busying herself with serving. His father sat at the head, his expression unreadable. Nate wasn't there, Lila whispered. He'd gone to a bar after the reception. The absence felt like a small mercy. James broke the silence, asking Eli about his carpentry work. "Lila says you built her a bookshelf," he said, his tone warm. "I'd love to see your work sometime." Eli managed a smile. "It's just wood and nails, but I love it. Keeps me grounded." His mother set a plate down harder than necessary. "Elijah," she said, her voice tight, "why do you keep coming back? You know how we feel." The room stilled. Lila's fork froze midair, and James's jaw tightened. Eli took a slow breath, meeting his mother's eyes. "Because Lila's my family. Because I love her, and I'm not ashamed of who I am." Her lips trembled, but she didn't look away. "You're choosing this lifestyle over us." "It's not a choice, Ma," Eli said, his voice steady but aching. "It's who I am. I didn't stop loving you. You stopped loving me." Tom cleared his throat, his voice gruff. "That's enough. Elijah, you're upsetting your mother." "No," Lila interjected, her voice sharp. "You're upsetting him. You've been punishing him for years for being himself. When are you going to stop?" The silence was deafening. Eli's heart pounded, but he felt a strange calm. He'd spent years hiding, shrinking, begging for scraps of acceptance. But Lila's love, James's support, they gave him the strength to stand tall. Tom stood, his chair scraping the floor. "I need air," he muttered, walking out. His mother followed, her shoulders slumped. Eli stared at his plate, the pancakes untouched. Lila reached for his hand. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "You don't have to keep fighting alone." James nodded. "She's right. You've got us." The brunch ended quietly, the tension unresolved. As Eli helped clear the table, he caught his mother watching him from the kitchen doorway. For a moment, her eyes softened, like she was seeing him for the first time. But she turned away, and the moment was gone. Outside, Lila hugged him tightly. "You're stronger than all of them," she said. "Don't ever forget that." Eli drove back to the motel, his heart a tangle of hope and hurt. He wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time, he felt like he wasn't alone. Lila and James were his family now, and maybe that was enough to keep going. Eli spent the afternoon wandering the town, the familiar streets a mix of comfort and pain. He passed the hardware store where he'd worked as a teenager. The park where he and Lila had played as kids. Everywhere he looked, memories clashed with the present. A reminder of what he'd lost and what he was fighting to keep. Back at the motel, he found a note slipped under his door. It was in his mother's handwriting. Meet me at the old oak tree. 6 p.m. His heart raced. The oak tree was a mile from the house. A place where they'd had picnics when he was young. Why now? Was this a trap? Or a chance at something more? He arrived at the tree as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of orange. His mother stood there, her hands clasped tightly. She looked smaller, fragile, nothing like the woman who'd raised him with iron conviction. Elijah, she started, her voice unsteady. I don't understand you. I've tried, but I can't. Eli's chest tightened, but he nodded. I know, Ma. I've never asked you to understand. Just to love me. Her eyes filled with tears. I do love you. But this, it goes against everything I was taught. Everything I believe. Eli took a step closer, his voice soft. I'm still your son. I'm still the kid who helped you plant roses, who stayed up late reading your old books. That hasn't changed. She looked away, her hands trembling. Your father, he's so angry. And Nate, he's just like him. I don't know how to fix this. You don't have to fix it, Eli said. Just don't push me away. She didn't respond, but she didn't leave either. They stood there, the silence heavy but not hostile. For the first time, Eli felt a crack in the wall between them, small but real. When he returned to the motel, Lila was waiting, her face anxious. What happened? She asked. Eli shrugged, a faint smile tugging at his lips. She talked to me. That's something. Lila hugged him, her voice fierce. It's a start. And I'm not letting you go, no matter what. That night, Eli lay awake, replaying his mother's words. It wasn't acceptance. Not yet. But it was a step. He thought of Lila's wedding, of James's quiet strength, of the cake he'd driven 12 hours to deliver. Love was messy, painful, but it was worth it. As he drifted to sleep, he felt a spark of hope that maybe, one day, his family might see him not as a disgrace, but as their son, their brother, their Eli. The morning Eli left Virginia, the sky was clear, the storm a distant memory. He packed his truck, the empty cake box a reminder of why he'd come. Lila and James met him at the motel, their faces bright despite the early hour. You don't have to go yet, Lila said, her voice thick. Stay a few more days. Eli shook his head, smiling. I've got work back home. And I've got you too now. That's enough. James clapped him on the shoulder. You're always welcome with us, Eli. Always. As he hugged Lila goodbye, she whispered, You changed everything. You showed them what love looks like. The drive back to Georgia was long, but the weight in Eli's chest was lighter. He thought of his mother's words under the oak tree, of Lila's fierce loyalty, of James's unexpected alliance. His family might never fully accept him, but he'd found something better, a family built on love, not judgment. Months later, a letter arrived from his mother. It was short, just a few lines. I'm trying. Elijah. I don't understand, but I'm trying. Come home for Christmas. Eli read it over and over, tears blurring the words. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. He drove 12 hours in the rain with a cake, and it hadn't been enough to change their minds. But it had been enough to show Lila he'd never give up, to show himself he was stronger than their hate. And maybe, just maybe, it had planted a seed in his family's hearts, one that might grow into something like love. Eli hung the letter on his fridge, a quiet promise to keep showing up, to keep loving, no matter the cost. The road ahead was long, but he wasn't driving it alone anymore.